Happy day students, today we shall learn the poem A Legend of Northland written by Pope Carey. Pope Carey was an American poetess and the younger sister of poetess Alice Carey. The sisters co-published poems in 1849 and then each went on to publish volumes of their own. After their deaths in 1871, joint anthologies of sisters' unpublished poems were also compiled. Before I proceed into the poem, let me give a brief introduction about it. A Legend of the Northland is a traditional popular story composed in the style of a ballad. It narrates the legend of how Saint Peter had once cursed an old lady for being mean and stingy. The poem thus imparts the important lesson that greed always gets punished, which is very true. If we are going to be greedy or mean, we will be punished definitely one or the other day. Now, why this poem is given this title, let us see about that. The title of the poem clearly states that the poem is about a legend from the cold region of Northland. Like every legend, it is a story passed on from generation and believed to be true, even though there is no evidence to establish its truth. So, the story has been passed from generation to generation, which it is a mythological story which is not true. The title is appropriate as it introduces the narrative form of the story, which is to impart moral values. So, this story imparts some moral values. When we start learning the poem, we shall learn about that. The place where the action of the story takes place is also clearly mentioned in the title. Where is it taking place? In the northern land of the earth. Hence, the title stands apt for launching a mythological tale. Now, coming to the summary. This poem is set in the backdrop of Northland, an extremely cold place somewhere near the North Pole. This snow-covered area has very few hours of daylight and cold nights in winters are also so long and cold that people cannot sleep through them. When it snows here, people harness their reindeers to pull their sledges, and the children here look like bears' cubs dressed in their funny and furry clothes, worn to shield themselves from winter. In this region, a mythological story is very popular and has been told from generation to generation. It is very difficult to establish this story as true because it is a legend, but like most legends, it has a significant moral lesson to teach. According to the legend, once Saint Peter, one of the apostles of Jesus Christ, had come to this world to preach the word of God. While wandering, he reached a cottage where a little woman was baking cakes. The day was about to end, and Saint Peter was feeling weak because he had been fasting. So he asked the woman to give him just one cake out of a big stock. The woman made a small cake for Saint, but when she laid it to bake, it seemed too big to her to be given for free. So she needed a smaller cake, but it too seemed as big as the earlier one. See how mean this lady is? Then she took a small bit of dough and rolled it as thin as a wafer, but could not part it even with that because of her greed. She was such a greedy and mean woman. She was surprised that her cakes seemed very small when she ate them, but appeared too large for charity. She did not have the mind or the willingness to give that cake as charity. However, Saint Peter, who had been waiting for the cake, grew angry since he was hungry and feeling weak. The greed of the woman had annoyed even a devout soul like Saint Peter. He pronounced that she was too selfish to deserve the blessings of human life with comforts of food, shelter, and fire for warmth. He cursed that she should become a woodpecker and get the get her title food only after working hard all day. So Saint Peter cursed this greedy and mean woman. After this, the little woman went through the chimney without getting a chance to say even a word. Out of the top of the chimney flew a woodpecker that was earlier the little woman. The clothes worn by the woman were charred by the fire in the chimney and became the black body of the woodpecker. But the scarlet cap worn by her was saved as the red plumes of the bird. Since then, every schoolboy in the countryside has seen her in the woods. Woods means small forest where she lives in the trees. Even today, she has to bore the dry wood in search of food. Coming to the literary devices. So we have alliteration. First one I have given it as alliteration. Alliteration is a repetition of the vowel sounds of the consonant sounds. So if the vowel sounds are repeated at the close intervals, the poet repeats the sound with the purpose of making a poem lyrical. Next, third one is repetition. Repetition of words or phrases is a literary device that a poet employs for the purpose of emphasis. If we want to emphasize something, we keep on repeating that phrase in the poem again and again. Examples: in the opening line of the poem, away, away in the Northland, the repetition of away emphasizes how distant Northland is. Similarly, in the line, and rolled it flat, the repetition of rolled emphasizes that the lady rolled the dough many times to make it as flat and thin as wafer. Again, in the line, by boring and boring and boring, the repetition of the word boring emphasizes the hard effort that the woman turned woodpecker has to make to find its food. Next one, enjambment, running lines of the poetry from one to the next without using any kind of punctuation. So we don't use any sort of punctuation between the lines. For example, if you see stanza 1, we don't use any punctuation between 3 and 4. Again, in stanza 2, we don't use any punctuation between 3 and 4. The same way it keeps repeating in some of the paragraphs. Coming to the simile, in a simile, a comparison between two distinctly different things is indicated by the word as or like. See the examples in stanza 2, the children look like bear cubs. The children are compared to the bear cubs. In stanza 9, baked it thin as a wafer. Cake is compared to a wafer. In stanza 15, clothes were burnt black as a coal. The color of the burnt clothes is compared to that of a coal. So, what message is a poet trying to convey through this poem? The poem conveys the message that as human beings we should have positive qualities like affection, love, fellow feeling, sympathy, generosity, and a sense of sharing. Only if we have these qualities with us, people will start accepting us. They will start believing us that we are also good souls. The poet also brings forth the idea that people with negative, inhuman values like selfishness, greed, and cruelty are ultimately punished. The people who are having bad qualities, at that time being, they might feel good, but in future, one day or the other, definitely they will be punished. The blessings of human life with food, shelter, and warmth have to be earned through a good moral and conduct. So, in life, we have to earn everything. We have to earn our living. Hope you are all clear with the poem, children. Thank you.